So, why do you guys think she flinched when she was bit by that spider? Well, that's because of neurons. So, what we have over there is the muscle cell, and this here is the neuron. So, what happened was her muscle cell um, d- gave an action potential from the stimuli of the spider biting her skin to the axon cell body, which cause an action potential. So what happens in an action potential is that the sodium channels open, and that causes sodium ions to flow inside the cell, and that depolarizes the cell to threshold, which is negative 55 millivolts. At that point, more sodium channels open, and that causes increased depolarization up to a certain point. And at that point, the cell starts to repolarize by opening the potassium channels, and now potassium channels flow in. So the cell becomes more negative, and this flows across the axon until it reaches the synapse, where calcium channels open and calcium flows in. So when the calcium channels flow in, vesicles containing neurotransmitters such as acetylcholine fuse with the membrane, which is over here, and release the acetylcholine particles into the synaptic cleft. So those neurotransmitters attach to the receptors of sodium channels on the next neuron, and that causes the cell to depolarize, and the action potential travels to the next neuron. Oh yeah, just in case I forgot, the resting membrane potential is negative 70 millivolts.
So what are neurons? Neurons are classified as sensory neurons, motor neurons, and interneurons, whereas neuroglia are classified as astrocytes, oligodendrocytes, microglia, and epididymal. Neurons are nerve cells, which are the structural and functional units of the nervous system. They transmit information in the function of electrochemical changes. Neuroglial cells provide neurons with the physiological requirements and functions, like the connective tissue cells and other systems. So where are the neurons in neuroglia, you ask? They're in the brain. So let me tell you the major regions of the brain. They include the cerebrum, the diencephalon, the midbrain, the pons, the medulla oblongata, and the cerebellum, along with many other things. The first one is the cerebrum. The cerebrum can be divided into the central hemisphere. This is responsible for conscious thoughts, sensations, intellectual functions, memory storage and retrieval, and complex movements. The second one is the diencephalon. This is connected to the cerebrum. The diencephalon consists of three parts. The first part is the hypothalamus, which contains sensory centers involved with emotions, autonomic function, and hormone productions. The second part is the thalamus, which contains relay and processing centers for sensory information. The third part is the epithalamus, that contains the pineal gland, which is an endocrine structure. The midbrain processes visual and auditory information and generates involuntary motor responses. The pons, which is the next one, connects the cerebrum to the brainstem. It also contains nuclei involved in somatic and visceral motor control. The medulla oblongata relays sensory information to the thalamus and other brainstem centers. It also contains major centers that regulate autonomic function, such as heart rate, blood pressure, respiration, and digestive activities. The cerebellum adjusts voluntary and involuntary motor activities on the basis of sensory information and stored moments of the previous memories. Another important point to mention is that the size of a body part does not correlate to the size of the brain in which that sensory information is relayed. For example, the hand is a lot smaller than the leg. However, the hand sends a lot more sensory stimuli to the brain than the leg does. Another thing is what meninges are. Meninges are the membranes that envelop the entire central nervous system. In addition to this, the cerebrospinal fluid is a clear, colorless bodily fluid found in the brain and spine. It acts as a cushion or buffer for the brain's cortex, providing a basic mechanical and immunological protection to the brain inside the skull, and it serves a vital function in cerebral autoregulation of cerebral blood flow.
So, to combine all the information that you've learned so far with the spider bite situation that just happened, we have to first understand the general structure of a neuron in the brain. In the neuron, there are 4 different regions with different functions. The four regions are the cell body, the dendrites, the axon, and the axon terminals. The cell body contains the nucleus and is the site of synthesis of virtually all neuronal proteins and membranes. Dendrites are the branch projections of a neuron that act to conduct the electrical stimulation received from other neural cells to the cell body or soma of the neuron from which the dendrites project. An axon is a long, slender projection of a nerve cell or neuron that conducts electrical impulses away from the neuron cell body or soma. Axon terminals are attached to neurons, and they are distal terminations of the branches of an axon.
Okay, so this makes up the
First, we are looking at the
body,
cell body of the neuron.
and then
The
the
dendrites attached to
stools
the cell body
are
are tree-like
the
extensions at the beginning
dendrites,
of a neuron that help increase the surface area
and
of the
then
cell
this
body.
entire thing is the body.
The nodes of Ranvier are gaps formed between the myelin sheaths generated by different cells. Schwann cells are cells that wrap around the axon, which create saltatory conduction and node skipping. There is also an interaction between the nervous system and the skeletal system. The skeletal system provides calcium for neuron function, protects the brain and the spinal cord, as well as controls the skeletal muscle contractions that produce bone thickening and maintenance and determines bone position. There is also a relationship between the muscular system and the nervous system. Facial muscles express emotional state, intrinsic laryngeal muscles permit communication, muscle spindles provide proprioceptive sensations, while the nervous system controls skeletal muscle contractions and as well as coordinates respiratory and cardiovascular activities. We hope you learned a lot in the journey through the neuron and the experience with the spider. See you soon!